find out.
While Australia had been humming along admirably under the acting Prime Ministership of Warren Truss, there was still a palpable unclenching of the buttocks when Tony Abbott returned from Indonesia and declared his visit a raging success. Despite his inexperience, the Prime Minister showed he had a clear grasp of the intricacies of international diplomacy.
The important thing is not to start a fight.
Mr Abbott visited President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono for face-to-face talks on the asylum seeker issue, as it's much safer than talking on the phone these days. The following day, Clive Palmer secured 2 seats in the Senate after advice from occupational health and safety experts. The Navy's increased role in border protection meant questions were being raised about whether Australia needed to spend more on defence. And after its 6-0 thrashing by France, clearly the answer was yes. The Palmer United Party surprised no one when they announced an alliance with Senator Ricky Muir of the Motoring Enthusiast Party. It's a natural union, really, between a party that aims to create mineral wealth and a party that aims to protect the average Australian family's right to modify vehicles. After a 4-week campaign, Bill Shorten won, if that's the right word, the Labor leadership. It was the first such internal ballot allowing Labor members to vote and, alarmingly, still showed a swing away from Labor. October 15 was another glorious day for the Labor brand, with former ALP National President Michael Williamson admitting to defrauding the New South Wales branch of the Health Services Union of almost $1 million. Money that could have been spent so much better by other HSU staff, in theory. In the US, past presidents are honoured with libraries built in their name. In Australia, it's left to those who served under past Prime Ministers to mark their contribution, which former Health Minister Nicola Roxon did at the John Button Memorial Lecture. Ms Roxon lauded former PM Kevin Rudd as a bastard who should quit the Parliament. Who needs a library? Still in Canberra, and the federal government launched a High Court challenge to the ACT's same-sex marriage laws, a move that seemed to have a bit of not in my backyard about it, or perhaps even not in my yard, house, outbuildings, or within a 20-kilometre radius of my property. And while those gay couples who marry pending the outcome of the court's decision won't be referred to as illegals, as people arriving by boat now are, they do share something in common with asylum seekers in that they are both at the mercy of some notorious straits. Meanwhile, in Western Australia, an Australian Electoral Commission Senate recount resulted in the Australian Sports Party picking up its first seat in Parliament, offering some hope that at last people might start paying attention to sport in this country. In November, Indonesia announced it was reviewing its cooperation with Australia on people smuggling in light of the spying revelations. Presumably, we already knew they were going to do that. Still overseas, Miss Venezuela defeated 86 contestants from countries around the world to become Miss Universe 2013. Once again, disappointingly, no beings from other planets or star systems in the universe made it through to the final. November 13 saw Kevin Rudd finally retire from politics. The very next day, the government attempted to lift the debt limit to $500 billion. Must be some retirement package they're giving Mr. Rudd. In opposition, the coalition was often accused of having no policies, but in December the coalition government proved their detractors wrong, coming up with 3 different education policies in the 1 week. Eventually they settled on the Gonski funding plan, with Minister Pyne then finding an extra $1.2 billion for the scheme, made up mostly from travel expenses repaid by coalition MPs. Time magazine capped off its 2013 naming Pope Francis as its Person of the Year, choosing the pontiff ahead of fellow nominee Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Pope Francis's strategy of using fewer chemical weapons on his people paying handsome dividends in this instance. Holden announced it would be closing its doors and winding up its windows in 2017, marking the end of one of America's iconic Australian companies.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos and
several imported brands of vehicles.
Football, meat pies, kangaroos and
Volkswagens, for example.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
Well, dreams came true for many people in 2013. For Tony Abbott, for Prince William and the Duchess of Cambridge, and for Jorge Mario Bergoglio. But we leave you tonight with one dream that sadly didn't come true.
I wish people would describe me as having sex appeal.
Good night.